Hi friends, it's 𝗕𝗶𝗹𝗹, 𝗕𝗂𝗋𝗋's Director of Government Affairs. I had the pleasure of seeing hundreds of you this morning at the Senate Education and Health Committee meeting. And it was by the skin of our teeth. We weren't sure that we were going to get to hear or have a fair hearing for SB 1031 this morning. We did have a hearing though. And there is an entire new animal before us. So let me give you the rundown of what happened, explain what it means, and then where we go next from here. So this morning before the committee, while we're waiting for the committee meeting, trying to figure out whether we would get to hear 1031 or not, I was able to pull aside the chairman of the education subcommittee that heard SB 1031, and that's Senator 𝗕𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗏. Now he said that he wasn't sure where the previous language came from. He was, and I said, well, is there a new substitute coming? Because we kind of were under the impression that would be the case. And he said, well, you'll see the language the first time when I do before the committee. So I said, oh, so there's a new substitute. And he would neither confirm or deny, but kept saying that we would get to read the language for the first time together. So we knew to be on the lookout, to be watching LIS, the Legislative Information System that the General Assembly uses to post this information. And sure enough, the chairman of the Senate Education and Health Committee did decide to call forward SB 1031, and they did immediately announce that they had what is called an amendment in the nature of a substitute. And what that basically means is it's a whole new bill, just the same bill number and kind of related to the same thing. So we have gone from an all-out attack on, the laws that govern our religious liberty as parents and our homeschool freedoms, to now this idea of a study. And then this study is it's a political group. So let me run through the details of this. Like I said, it's a whole new animal. And this study, what it will do is it will put forward a group of stakeholders, if you will, from different places in the Commonwealth. But the members of this committee are selected by none other than the hostile to homeschooling Speaker of the House, Delegate Dawn Scott, and then the other half of the committee members will be put forward by another hostile to homeschooling committee, and that's the Senate Rules Committee. So it's kind of this division of political appointees, really. It's made to look as if it's homeschool stakeholders. There's people who use religious exemption, or people who were educated under religious exemption, homeschool parents, public school parents, things like that. But the problem is the people selecting them they're all politicians, and they're all politicians who are hostile to homeschooling. So rather than letting the democratic process, the representative republic, take its course, they're trying to usurp this with this political game playing. So obviously we 100% oppose this study. What this study really equates to is kind of like a kangaroo court that will end up costing the taxpayers money to pay for the members to travel and to meet and things like that. And then in the end, they hope to have results to bring forward to next year's legislative session. So this is an effort to keep SB 1031 on life support. They realize, because of you guys, because of your strong voices, and because of your uprising, that this bill is going to die. So this is one last ditch effort to kind of put it on life support and give it hopes. They're holding out hope, kind of biding their time for next year, hoping that they will either hold the House. The people who oppose homeschooling will either hold the majority in the House, or that they'll win the governor's seat, so that we won't have the power of the veto that we have right now. So let me see what other things I need to cover here. So some of the points I made this morning when I spoke after this bill was released, that this study, and even the original bill, the repeal of religious exemption, they don't help fix any problems. Admittedly, there are children who suffer through terrible situations and who don't receive the best education. And that's sad, but that's part of the human condition. You're going to see that in homeschool, you're going to see that in public school, you're going to see that in any environment where there are humans. So changing the laws on this don't help problems. Rather, it's discriminating against parents who see an authority higher than the government. They see God as the authority higher than the government. The other thing is when we looked at religious education, those who opted for religious education in our 2019 study, we found that they scored in the 83rd percentile. So these kids are doing pretty well. And you have to understand that in Virginia, to claim religious exemption, you go to a school board, you go to a politically elected body, and you have to put forward that you have a deeply held bona fide religious belief, and you have to delineate that from a political, sociological, or philosophical belief before a public body, that their meetings are subject to FOIA law and other things. We're not even, as homeschoolers, granted the same workaround, or I can't come up with the word, exemption from FOIA that public school students are. Excuse me, it's a bill we've tried to work on before, but we're not even granted that same exemption from FOIA. So parents who go through all this effort to come before a public body and profess their deeply held religious beliefs are parents who really, in great majority, really are trying to do the best for their children. They love their children, and they have a right. Virginia has such a long history, longer than our United States, of religious liberty, and we need to hold fast to that, and we need to be a beacon of light to other states. The other thing is, I was reflecting after the committee on, I was being interviewed by a reporter who started to ask me, well, how do we know homeschoolers are doing so well if we're not collecting and reporting all the results on them? And I realized, well, here's one of the ways we know they're doing well. My oldest son, he's a sophomore in college this year. And when I homeschooled him all the way through. And in Virginia, as you probably know, I, as the parent, am the issuing authority of his diploma. And when he was a little boy and we were just starting our homeschooling journey, I was worried about how was I going to get him accepted into a college when I'm the issuing authority of his diploma. And sure enough, by the time we got to college applications a couple of years ago, he applied to public schools, private schools, large schools, small schools, all over the country. And sure enough, even with little old me as the issuing authority of his diploma, these schools were all interested in him. And it had nothing to do with me as the issuing authority. It had to do with the known and understood success of homeschooling nationwide. These schools have, boards and financiers to answer to, and they're not going to take a bunch of homeschoolers. They don't think it's their benefit. If you remember, decades and generations ago, they were very skeptical of homeschool kids. But my experience, I have heard from so many other people as well, that these schools are hungry for homeschoolers because they know how successful it is. So I just wanted to share that reflection as well. And one other thing on testing with the religious exemption is we do have a bill, and it's going to be heard in subcommittee today, HB 2620. Our lovely Delegate Oates from up my way in Northern Virginia is carrying this bill for us. And what it will do is make sure that those who are religiously exempt and do want access to AP testing, PSAT, and pre-ACT will have that access. We are trying to allow access for them if they want it. We'll see whether the opposition wants them to be allowed access to testing or not. So that'll be at 4 o'clock today in the K-12 House Education Subcommittee. So that'll be interesting. So let's get back to SB 1031. Where is it now and what is happening? We talked a little bit about what it is, but where is it and what's happening? So right now, what happened is, since they turned this bill into a study, like I said, it's a whole new animal. And this new animal is a fox. And they want the fox to guard the homeschool hen house. And we cannot allow that. So because this is now a new animal and now it's a study, there are costs associated with running a study. So rather than taking this bill and reporting it to the full Senate, they need to report it to the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee. Anytime there's a cost associated with it, it means it affects the state budget. In Virginia, our Constitution mandates that we balance our budget. So as a result, by adding new costs, the senators will now need to look at how can they fit this into the budget? What else do they need to cut? How can they make sure we end up at zero at the end of the budget? So that could take a few days. So you're going to have to stay tuned to figure out when we might have a hearing before Senate Finance and Appropriations. They do have meetings both tomorrow, which is Wednesday, the 29th, and Thursday. However, I don't know how long it will take for them to come up with what's called a fiscal impact statement. And that's a fancy way of saying what are the projected costs associated with running this study. So we'll keep, stay tuned. We'll keep you posted on that. From there, it will be sent to the Senate floor for a vote. It was reported and referred today, which means that they went ahead and reported it out of committee, and then they referred it to Senate Finance. So from Senate Finance and Appropriations, it should go from there to the full Senate unless they keep it there. They could say that they can't find room in the budget. That's what we're hoping. Or just vote it down, just vote to kill it. So here's what we need to do now. We need to, first of all, write and call your own senator, the one who represents your district, and tell them this is a whole new animal. It's a fox trying to guard my hen house, and you oppose this. Secondly, ask them how they intend to vote on it, and have your friends do the same. Next, we want to reach out to all the members of the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee. We'll be posting that information, in the notes here. And again, we'll be doing a legislative update giving that information, okay? And then there's one more senator who needs to hear from you. The Senate Minority Leader, Ryan McDougall, over the years has been a friend of homeschooling, but for some reason on SB 1031, he is not taking a position, and we don't understand why. So we need to be in touch with Senator McDougall, who is the Senate Republican Minority Leader, and we need to ask him, why aren't you coming out? If you're in a leadership position, let's lead the way against SB 1031. So let's hold him accountable and ask him to be part of this movement against SB 1031. I think that's about it for now. If there are any more specific questions, the bill will also post a link so that you can read SB 1031, so that you can read the language of this study. Like I said, it's made up of all sorts of stakeholders, but they're all appointed by they're political appointees by the Speaker of the House or the Senate Rules Committee. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope I've covered most of the bases for you guys, and if there are other questions, please let us know. We're doing our best to keep up with them and answer it, and again, I'll be tuning in again as soon as we have any major updates, like when this might be heard before Senate Finance Committee, or what revelations come about in the meantime. So thank you guys for staying loud, being visible, being vocal, and being part of this process, and being a force. So I'll look forward to seeing you guys soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.